What would you do if you were down to your last copper coin, the weight of a hard life pressing down on your shoulders, and you saw a man, even more destitute, shivering in the cold, his eyes pleading for a scrap of hope? And what if, in that moment of selfless giving, you unknowingly set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter your destiny and the fate of an entire town, all because that ragged beggar was, in fact, a titan of industry, a tycoon in disguise? This is the true story, or as true as the legends of the Old West Alawa Elara May, a saloon girl in the bustling, yet unforgiving, town of Prosperity Gulch, Colorado, in the year of our Lord 1888. It is the most remarkable and dangerous case of hidden identities and unexpected kindness that ever graced the dusty trails of the American frontier. The year 1888 found Prosperity Gulch, Colorado, a town caught between the raw, untamed spirit of the frontier and the encroaching march of industrial progress. Nestled deep within a fertile valley of the Rocky Mountains, its name was a testament to the dreams of quick riches that had drawn thousands to its silver and gold mines. The air was thick with the scent of pine, gunpowder, and ambition, a heady mix that fueled both fortune and despair. Wooden buildings, hastily erected, lined the main street, their facades a patchwork of rough-hewn timber and optimistic paint. Saloons, general stores, assay offices, and boarding houses jostled for space, each a microcosm of the town's transient population. The clatter of hammers, the distant rumble of dynamite, and the incessant chatter of prospectors and merchants formed the town's constant symphony. This was an era of stark contrasts. On one hand, the burgeoning railroad lines promised connection and prosperity, bringing in goods, people, and capital. On the other, the harsh realities of mining life, the ever-present threat of claim jumpers, and the ruthless competition for resources created a volatile social landscape. Wealth was being amassed at an unprecedented rate by a select few, while many others toiled in dangerous conditions, barely scraping by. The social fabric was stretched thin, with lines drawn between the respectable citizens and those who worked in the saloons and dance halls, often seen as the lowest rung of society, yet undeniably vital to the town's entertainment and economy. Elara May, known to most as Ellie, was a fixture of the Golden Nugget Saloon, her voice a beacon of warmth in the smoky, boisterous establishment. At 28 years old, she carried the weariness of a life lived on the edge, but her eyes, the color of a clear mountain stream, still held a spark of defiance and an undeniable kindness. She had arrived in Prosperity Gulch 3 years prior, fleeing a past she rarely spoke of, seeking anonymity and a chance to earn an honest living, however unconventional. Her days were a blur of serving drinks, singing ballads that spoke of lost loves and distant homes, and enduring the often unwanted advances of miners and cowboys. She was a survivor, her spirit tempered by hardship, yet her compassion remained an unyielding flame within her. The circumstances that would lead to her fateful encounter began, as many things do in the West, with the arrival of a stranger. Not a stranger of means, riding in on a fine horse, but a figure of abject poverty. He appeared on the outskirts of town, a gaunt man wrapped in tattered clothes, his face etched with hunger and cold. He was just another lost soul in a town that had seen too many, yet his presence would unknowingly become the fulcrum upon which Ellie's life, and the future of Prosperity Gulch, would pivot. He was Elias Thorne, a name whispered in boardrooms and railroad offices across the nation, a man whose empire spanned continents, now reduced to a shivering heap on a cold Colorado street, all by his own design. He had come to Prosperity Gulch not for profit, but for truth, seeking to understand the real impact of his vast enterprises, to see the world through the eyes of the forgotten. The gas lamps of the Golden Nugget Saloon cast a warm, inviting glow onto the dusty street, a stark contrast to the biting chill of the late autumn evening. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke, cheap whiskey, and the boisterous laughter of men seeking solace from the harsh realities of their lives. Elara May, her voice a lilting melody above the din, strummed her worn guitar, singing a mournful tune about a miner's lost love. Her eyes, however, scanned the room, not for admiration, but for the faces of those who might offer a few extra coins, for tonight, her own purse was painfully light. "Another round, Ellie," roared Big Jim, a burly prospector whose luck seemed to have run as dry as the Colorado riverbed in August. Ellie offered a tired smile, her fingers still plucking the final chords. She knew Big Jim wouldn't pay until his next hopeful strike, but a refusal would only sour the mood. Maud, the saloon's owner, a woman whose face was as weathered as a canyon wall but whose heart was surprisingly soft, caught Ellie's eye and gave a subtle nod. "Go on, girl. He ain't got much, but he's loyal." Ellie moved through the crowded tables, her movements fluid and practiced, dodging outstretched hands and slurred compliments. She poured whiskey, collected sparse coins, and offered kind words where she could. Among the regulars were Sheriff Brody, a man of quiet integrity struggling to maintain order in a town teetering on the edge of chaos, and Jedediah, the stoic bartender, whose gaze missed nothing. They were her anchors in this turbulent sea. "Ellie, you sing like an angel," slurred a young miner, his eyes bloodshot. "But you got the devil in your smile." "And you, young man," she retorted with a wink, "have a tongue as smooth as a polished stone, but a wallet as empty as a dry well." The crowd chuckled, and the miner, good-naturedly, bought her a drink she didn't want. As the night wore on, Ellie felt the familiar ache in her feet and the growing hollowness in her stomach. Her earnings for the night were meager, barely enough to cover her rent at Mrs. O'Malley's boarding house, let alone a decent meal. She had a single silver dollar, a precious remnant from a better week, tucked deep in her apron pocket. It was meant for a new pair of boots, her old ones having given up the ghost weeks ago, leaving her toes perpetually cold. The saloon finally began to empty as the first hints of dawn painted the eastern sky. Ellie helped Jedediah clean up, stacking chairs and wiping down tables. Maud counted the night's take, her brow furrowed. "Tough night, Ellie. Folks are holdin' onto their coin tighter than a rattlesnake to its den." "I reckon so, Maud," Ellie replied, her voice raspy from singing. "Times are hard." "They always are, child. But you got a good heart. Don't let this place take that from you." Maud handed her a small pouch of coins. "Here, a little extra for your troubles." Ellie smiled gratefully. "Much obliged, Maud. You're a saint." Stepping out into the crisp morning air, Ellie pulled her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders. The street was deserted, save for a lone figure huddled against the wall of the general store, wrapped in what looked like burlap sacks. He was a man of indeterminate age, his face obscured by a matted beard and the shadow of his wide-brimmed, tattered hat. He shivered violently, his body racked by coughs that echoed in the pre-dawn silence. Ellie had seen beggars before, plenty of them. Prosperity Gulch attracted them like flies to honey, drawn by the distant promise of wealth, only to find themselves stranded and forgotten. Usually, she walked past, her own struggles too pressing to spare much thought. But something about this man, his utter desolation, struck a chord deep within her. He wasn't aggressively begging, just existing, a silent testament to human suffering. She hesitated, her hand instinctively going to her apron pocket, feeling the reassuring weight of her last silver dollar. New boots. A warm meal. These were necessities. But the image of his shaking form, the raw vulnerability in his posture, gnawed at her. "Hey, mister," she called out softly, her voice a little hoarse. The man slowly lifted his head, his eyes, surprisingly sharp and intelligent despite their sunken appearance, met hers. They held a depth of experience, a weariness that went beyond mere hunger. "You all right there?" she asked, knowing it was a foolish question. He merely shook his head, a dry, rasping sound escaping his lips. "Cold, and hungry, miss." Ellie's resolve hardened. She pulled out the silver dollar. It glinted in the faint light. "Here," she said, pressing it into his calloused hand. "Get yourself some coffee and a warm meal. It's all I got left." The man's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise, then a profound gratitude passing through them. He looked at the coin, then back at her, a silent question in his gaze. "Why, miss? You don't look like you got much to spare yourself." Ellie shrugged, a wry smile touching her lips. "Maybe that's why. We all gotta look out for each other, ain't we? Even in a place like this." She turned to leave, the cold seeping into her toes, a pang of regret for the boots, but a strange warmth spreading through her chest. "God bless you, miss," the man whispered, his voice surprisingly clear now. "You'll not regret this." Ellie merely waved a hand over her shoulder, not looking back. She had done her part. She had no idea that the man she had just helped was Elias Thorne, the very tycoon who owned the railroad lines that brought supplies to Prosperity Gulch, the man who held significant stakes in the very mines that fueled the town's economy. He had come to Prosperity Gulch in disguise, weary of the flattery and deceit that surrounded his wealth, seeking an honest assessment of his impact, a genuine human connection. And in Alara May, the saloon girl, he had found it. Her simple act of kindness, given without expectation or knowledge of his true identity, was the very thing he had been searching for. It was a call to action, a silent plea for justice and humanity that he, the powerful Elias Thorne, could not ignore. He watched her walk away, a plan already forming in his shrewd, calculating mind, a plan that began with a single silver dollar and a saloon girl's compassionate heart. The days that followed Alara May's encounter with the beggar settled into a familiar rhythm, yet an undercurrent of change began to stir in Prosperity Gulch. Ellie, despite the continued chill in her boots, felt a quiet satisfaction. The silver dollar was gone, but the memory of the beggar's grateful eyes warmed her more than any new leather could. She continued her nightly performances at the Golden Nugget, her songs now carrying a subtle note of resilience, a quiet strength that even the rowdiest patrons seemed to notice. Meanwhile, Elias Thorne, no longer a shivering figure on the street, had vanished as mysteriously as he appeared. He had taken refuge in a small, unassuming cabin on the outskirts of town, a property he had quietly purchased months ago under an assumed name. From this vantage point, he observed. He watched Ellie, noting her tireless work, her genuine interactions with the townsfolk, her unwavering spirit despite her circumstances. He also watched the town itself, seeing the cracks beneath the veneer of prosperity. He saw the miners, their faces grimed with coal dust and exhaustion, their wages barely enough to keep them fed. He saw the merchants, struggling against the predatory pricing of larger suppliers. And he saw the insidious influence of Silas, the serpent, Blackwood. Silas Blackwood was a man whose ambition was as vast and cold as the Colorado winter. A land speculator and a silent partner in several of the town's less reputable businesses, Blackwood was slowly but surely consolidating power. He owned the only livery stable, controlled the prices of feed, and had a network of informants throughout Prosperity Gulch. His enforcer, a hulking brute named Grizzly Pete, was a constant, menacing presence, ensuring Blackwood's will was done. Thorne, disguised as a quiet prospector named Elias Stone, spent his days in the general store, the assay office, and even the Golden Nugget, listening, observing, piecing together the intricate web of Blackwood's corruption. One evening, as Ellie sang a particularly poignant ballad, Thorne sat in a shadowed corner of the saloon, nursing a single whiskey. He saw Blackwood, impeccably dressed, his eyes like a predator's, watching Ellie with an unsettling intensity. Blackwood was known for his attempts to acquire anything of value in Prosperity Gulch, and Ellie, with her talent and spirit, was clearly on his radar. "She's a fine singer, ain't she?" Thorne remarked casually to Old Man Jenkins, the town's resident philosopher and chronic drunk, who sat beside him. Jenkins, his eyes bleary but surprisingly perceptive, grunted. "Aye. Too good for this place. Too good for the likes of Blackwood, who's got his eye on her like a wolf on a lamb." Thorne's jaw tightened imperceptibly. He had already learned of Blackwood's reputation for coercing businesses and individuals into his schemes. He had heard whispers of miners being cheated out of their claims, of small businesses being driven into bankruptcy. His own company, Thorne Enterprises, had a policy of fair dealings, a policy he feared was being undermined by the very environment his expansion had created. Ellie, unaware of the powerful eyes watching her, continued her routine. She noticed a new face in the crowd, a young woman named Lily, barely 18, who had recently arrived in town, wide-eyed and hopeful, seeking work as a saloon girl. Ellie felt a pang of concern for Lily, remembering her own naive arrival in the West. She took the girl under her wing, offering advice and protection from the rougher elements. "Don't let them get to you, Lily," Ellie advised one evening, as they shared a meager meal in the saloon's kitchen. "Keep your head up, and your wits sharper than a Bowie knife." "But it's so hard, Ellie," Lily confessed, her voice trembling. "Mr. Blackwood, he offered me a special arrangement. Said he could make sure I never wanted for anything." Ellie's eyes flashed with anger. "Don't you dare listen to that snake, Lily. He'll take everything you have, and then some. You stick with Maud and me. We'll look out for you." Thorne, overhearing snippets of this conversation from his prospector persona, felt a surge of admiration for Ellie's protective instincts. She was not just surviving, she was actively trying to shield others from the darkness. He began to subtly gather information about Blackwood's various holdings and his methods of intimidation. He learned that Blackwood was attempting to buy up water rights, a critical resource in the arid region, threatening to choke out smaller mining operations and ranches. One afternoon, Thorne, still in his disguise, visited the local land office. He struck up a conversation with the clerk, a nervous young man named Thomas. "Heard old man Peterson lost his claim to Blackwood," Thorne mumbled, feigning ignorance. Thomas fidgeted. "Well, sir, Peterson, he defaulted on a loan from Blackwood's investment company. Couldn't pay the interest. It was all legal, mind you." "Legal, perhaps," Thorne mused, "but fair. Peterson worked that claim for 20 years. He pressed further, subtly extracting details about Blackwood's loan sharking practices, his inflated interest rates, and the questionable clauses in his contracts. It was a systematic exploitation, designed to ensnare the desperate. Thorne also observed Sheriff Brody, a man clearly burdened by the town's growing problems. Brody was honest, but understaffed and outmaneuvered by Blackwood's legal maneuvering and brute force. Thorne saw Brody trying to mediate disputes, his face etched with frustration, knowing he couldn't always enforce true justice. "Sheriff, you look like you've seen a ghost," Ellie remarked to Brody one morning, finding him slumped over a cup of coffee at the Golden Nugget. Brody sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Worse, Ellie. I've seen the future of this town if Blackwood gets his way. He's buying up everything, squeezing folks dry. And I can't prove a damn thing. Ellie placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. You do what you can, Sheriff. That's all anyone can ask. Thorne, listening from a nearby table, realized the depth of the problem. Blackwood wasn't just a local bully, he was a systemic threat, exploiting the very opportunities Thorne's own enterprises had helped create. The silver dollar Ellie had given him wasn't just an act of charity, it was a silent plea from the heart of the frontier, a plea for someone to stand against the encroaching darkness. His journey in disguise was revealing more than he could have imagined, confirming his deepest fears about unchecked power and the vulnerability of the common man. He knew now that his presence in Prosperity Gulch was not merely an observation mission, it was a prelude to intervention. The seeds of a major confrontation were being sown, and Elias Thorne, the beggar, was preparing to shed his rags and reveal the tycoon within. The grip of winter tightened its hold on Prosperity Gulch, bringing with it not only bitter cold but also a chilling escalation of Blackwood's machinations. Elias Thorne, still maintaining his Elias Stone persona, had gathered enough evidence to confirm his suspicions. Silas Blackwood was systematically undermining the town's economic stability, using his control over resources and his network of corrupt associates to drive out competition and seize valuable assets. The water rights, the timber supply, even the prices at the general store, all were being manipulated. Ellie, meanwhile, found herself facing a personal crisis. Maud, the resilient owner of the Golden Nugget, fell gravely ill. A sudden, virulent fever swept through her, leaving her bedridden and weak. Without Maud at the helm, the saloon struggled. Jedediah, the bartender, did his best, but the Golden Nugget's heart and soul was Maud. Ellie stepped up, managing the books, ordering supplies, and trying to keep spirits high, but the financial strain was immense. The saloon's meager profits dwindled, threatening its closure. We ain't gonna make it, Ellie, Jedediah lamented one evening, looking at the ledger with despair. The cost of whiskey and beer has gone up again, thanks to Blackwood's exclusive distributors. And folks ain't got the coin to spend like they used to. Ellie felt a knot of fear in her stomach. The Golden Nugget was her home, her sanctuary. Maud was like a mother to her. Losing the saloon would mean losing everything. We can't give up, Jedediah. Maud needs us. Blackwood, ever the opportunist, saw his chance. He approached Ellie with a predatory smile, offering to buy out Maud's share of the saloon, ostensibly to help her in her illness. It's a generous offer, Miss May, he purred, his eyes lingering on her. Maud can recover in comfort, and you, well, you'd have a secure position, under my protection. Ellie's blood ran cold. She knew what protection from Blackwood meant. It meant servitude, a life under his thumb. The Golden Nugget isn't for sale, Mr. Blackwood, she stated, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Not while Maud is alive, and not ever to you. Blackwood's smile vanished, replaced by a sneer. You'll regret that, little bird. This town belongs to me, piece by piece. And soon, so will that dusty old saloon. He turned and left, his threat hanging heavy in the air. Thorne, still observing, saw the desperation in Ellie's eyes and the growing fear among the townsfolk. He had learned that Blackwood was not only manipulating prices but also secretly buying up the mortgages of several key businesses, including the Golden Nugget, through shell companies. Maud's illness had simply accelerated his timeline. The town was slowly being strangled. He decided it was time for a more direct approach, though still veiled. He sought out Sheriff Brody, finding him in his office, poring over dusty legal documents. "Sheriff," Thorne began, his voice low and steady, "I've been doing some prospecting, and I've noticed some irregularities in the land claims and business dealings around here." Brody looked up, his face etched with weariness. "Irregularities? Mr. Stone, this whole town is an irregularity. Blackwood's got his fingers in every pie, and he's got enough lawyers to make it all look clean on paper." "Perhaps," Thorne conceded, "but what if the paper itself is flawed? What if the original deeds, the very foundations of these transactions, were obtained under duress or through outright fraud?" Thorne then presented Brody with carefully compiled notes, detailing the patterns of Blackwood's acquisitions, the suspiciously high interest rates, and the sudden defaults of property owners. He pointed out discrepancies in dates and signatures, subtle clues he had uncovered through his extensive network of contacts and his own keen eye for detail. Brody's eyes widened as he reviewed the information. This is more than just speculation, Mr. Stone. This is evidence. But it's circumstantial. Blackwood will deny everything, and his lawyers will tear it apart. Perhaps, Thorne said, a glint in his eye. Unless we have a witness. A victim willing to speak out. And perhaps, a powerful ally who can ensure that justice is not merely a word, but a force. Meanwhile, Ellie's situation worsened. Lily, the young saloon girl she had taken under her wing, disappeared. Panic seized Ellie. She searched everywhere, asking Jedediah, Mrs. O'Malley, even Big Jim. No one had seen Lily since she left the saloon the previous night. A cold dread settled in Ellie's heart. She suspected Blackwood. He had threatened Lily before, and now, with Maud ill and the saloon vulnerable, he might have acted. Ellie confronted Blackwood at his lavish, newly built office on the edge of town. "Where is Lily, Mr. Blackwood?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and fury. Blackwood leaned back in his plush chair, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Lily? Oh, the little bird flew the coop, Miss May. Perhaps she found a better opportunity. Or perhaps she simply realized that some offers are too good to refuse." His implication was clear. Lily was now under his protection, likely trapped in a life of forced servitude. "You monster!" Ellie spat, her hands clenched into fists. "Careful, Miss May," Blackwood warned, his voice turning cold. "Your fiery spirit is admirable, but it won't save you or your ailing friend. The Golden Nuggets mortgage is due next week. And if you can't pay, it will be mine. And then, perhaps, you'll be more amenable to my offers. Ellie stumbled out of Blackwood's office, her heart heavy with despair. Maud was dying, Lily was gone, and the saloon was on the brink of ruin. The weight of the world seemed to press down on her. She walked aimlessly through the cold, empty streets, feeling utterly alone. She remembered the beggar, the silver dollar, the fleeting moment of connection. It felt like a lifetime ago, a dream in a nightmare. Unbeknownst to her, Thorne had witnessed her confrontation with Blackwood. He saw the raw pain in her eyes, the desperate courage. He knew then that the time for subtle observation was over. The pieces were in place. The evidence, the witness, Brody, and the personal stake, Ellie and Lily. He had tested the waters, observed the players, and now, the game was about to change. The Tycoon was ready to shed his disguise and unleash his full power, not for profit, but to fulfill a promise made by a single silver dollar. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation, where the true nature of power and kindness would be revealed. The week that followed was a blur of despair for Ellie. Maud's condition worsened, her breathing shallow, her strength fading. The Golden Nugget, once a lively hub, now felt like a tomb. Blackwood's men, led by Grizzly Pete, began to loiter outside, their presence a constant, menacing reminder of the impending foreclosure. Ellie had tried everything appealing to local merchants, even to the few honest miners, but Blackwood's grip on Prosperity Gulch was too tight. No one dared cross him. On the day the mortgage was due, Blackwood arrived at the Golden Nugget, flanked by Grizzly Pete and two other hulking figures. He wore a triumphant smirk, a legal document clutched in his hand. "Well, Miss May," he announced, his voice echoing in the nearly empty saloon, "it seems your time is up. The Golden Nugget, and all its contents, are now mine." Ellie stood defiantly behind the bar, her face pale but her eyes blazing. "You won't get away with this, Blackwood. This saloon belongs to Maud, and she'll fight you to her last breath." A touching sentiment, Blackwood sneered, but sentiment doesn't pay the bills. "Now, step aside, or my men will remove you." Grizzly Pete took a menacing step forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his pistol. Just as Pete reached for Ellie, the saloon doors swung open with a resounding thud. Standing in the doorway, not the ragged prospector, Elias Stone, but a man transformed. Elias Thorne, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his silver hair neatly combed, his eyes radiating an authority that silenced the room. Behind him stood Sheriff Brody, his hand on his gun, and a small contingent of deputies. Blackwood's triumphant smile faltered. "Thorne, what in blazes are you doing here? And in those clothes?" Thorne stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Blackwood, cold and unwavering. "Silas Blackwood, I believe we have some unfinished business." He gestured to Brody. "Sheriff, if you please." Brody stepped forward, holding up a stack of documents. "Silas Blackwood, I have here warrants for your arrest, for fraud, extortion, and the illegal acquisition of property, including the Golden Nugget Saloon, through fraudulent means." Blackwood scoffed, regaining some of his composure. "Fraud? Extortion? This is preposterous. My dealings are all perfectly legal." "You have no proof, Sheriff." "And you, Thorne, what is this charade? You're a prospector, a nobody." Thorne merely smiled, a chilling, knowing smile. "A prospector, perhaps. But also the owner of the Thorne Railroad and mining conglomerate. And I have been prospecting for truth in this town, Mr. Blackwood. And I've found a rich vein of it, all pointing to you." He then turned to Ellie, who stared at him, her mind reeling. The beggar. The prospector. The tycoon. It was all the same man. "Miss May," Thorne said, his voice softening slightly, "do you remember a cold morning, a few weeks ago, when you gave your last silver dollar to a beggar on the street?" Ellie's eyes widened, a gasp escaping her lips. You were him." "Indeed," Thorne confirmed. "That act of kindness, Miss May, was the most genuine thing I witnessed in this town. It was a stark contrast to the greed and corruption I found festering beneath the surface, largely thanks to Mr. Blackwood here." Blackwood, realizing the gravity of the situation, snarled. "This is a setup. You can't prove anything, Thorne. My lawyers will tear you apart." "Your lawyers," Thorne retorted calmly, "will find themselves facing the full legal might of Thorne Enterprises, backed by irrefutable evidence. I've spent weeks gathering testimony from your victims, from the miners you cheated, the businesses you ruined, and the families you displaced. And I have the original, untampered deeds and contracts, proving your forgeries and manipulations. He then produced a thick file, handing it to Brody. These documents, Sheriff, detail every one of Blackwood's illegal transactions, including the fraudulent mortgage on this very saloon. Blackwood, seeing the game was truly up, made a desperate move. He lunged for a hidden pistol beneath the bar. But Grizzly Pete, surprisingly, didn't move. He looked at Thorne, then at the sheriff, a flicker of fear in his eyes. He knew when he was outmatched. Thorne, anticipating Blackwood's move, was faster. He moved with a surprising agility for a man of his stature, disarming Blackwood with a swift, practiced motion. The pistol clattered to the floor. "It's over, Blackwood," Brody stated, his voice firm. "You're under arrest." As deputies moved to apprehend Blackwood and his remaining henchmen, Ellie finally found her voice. "Lily. Where is Lily, Blackwood?" Blackwood, now handcuffed, glared at her. She's at the old mining shack, near Miller's Creek." "I was going to send her away." Thorne immediately dispatched 2 deputies to retrieve Lily. He then turned to Ellie, his expression one of profound respect. "Miss May, your kindness saved more than just a beggar that day. It saved this town. It gave me the conviction to act." The confrontation had been swift, decisive, and utterly shocking to the few patrons who had witnessed it. The revelation of Elias Thorne's true identity, and his connection to Ellie's simple act of charity, spread like wildfire through Prosperity Gulch. The town, long held in Blackwood's shadow, felt a collective gasp of relief, followed by a surge of hope. The Tycoon, who had walked among them as a beggar, had brought justice, sparked by the last coin of a saloon girl. The truth, once hidden, now shone brightly, illuminating the path forward for Prosperity Gulch. The days following Blackwood's arrest were a whirlwind of activity in Prosperity Gulch. Elias Thorne, now openly the powerful magnate, worked tirelessly with Sheriff Brody to unravel the tangled web of Blackwood's corruption. Properties were restored to their rightful owners, fraudulent debts were nullified, and a sense of justice, long absent, began to permeate the town. Lily was found, shaken but unharmed, and quickly reunited with Ellie, her gratitude immense. Maud, miraculously, began to recover. The news of Blackwood's downfall and the Golden Nugget's salvation seemed to breathe new life into her. Ellie, with Lily's help, nursed her back to health, and slowly, the saloon began to regain its former vibrancy, now free from the shadow of impending doom. Thorne, however, did not simply disappear after delivering justice. He had seen the true heart of Prosperity Gulch, and he recognized its potential, not just for profit, but for genuine community. He invested heavily, but wisely, in the town's infrastructure, ensuring fair wages for miners, establishing a proper bank with reasonable loan rates, and even funding a small schoolhouse. He appointed a trusted manager to oversee his local interests, a man known for his integrity and commitment to the community. One quiet afternoon, Thorne found Ellie sitting alone at a table in the Golden Nugget, polishing glasses. Maud was resting upstairs, and Lily was helping Jedediah with inventory. "Miss May," Thorne began, his voice gentle. Ellie looked up, a soft smile on her face. "Mr. Thorne. Or should I call you Elias?" He chuckled. "Elias will do, if you'll call me that. I came to thank you, truly. Your kindness, that single silver dollar, it reminded me of what truly matters. It gave me the courage to look beyond ledgers and profits, and to see the human cost of unchecked ambition." "I just did what felt right," Ellie replied, shrugging. "You were a man in need." And you were a woman of extraordinary character, Thorn countered. I've seen the way you care for Maud, for Lily, for this town. You have a strength, a moral compass, that is rare and precious. He paused, then continued, I'm returning to my headquarters in Denver soon, but I wanted to ensure your future, and that of the Golden Nugget, is secure. I've settled Maud's mortgage, of course, and made arrangements for her medical care. And I'd like to offer you a partnership in the Golden Nugget. Not just as an employee, but as a co-owner. You've proven yourself more than capable, and this place clearly means the world to you. Ellie stared at him, speechless. A partnership? Co-owner? It was a dream she hadn't dared to whisper, a future she thought impossible. Tears welled in her eyes. Elias. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he urged, a warm smile on his face. And continue to be the heart of this place. Prosperity Gulch needs you, Ellie Mae, more than it needs any gold or silver. And so, Elara Mae, the saloon girl who had given her last coin to a beggar, became a respected businesswoman, a pillar of the revitalized Prosperity Gulch. She continued to sing at the Golden Nugget, her voice now filled with a joy and hope that resonated deeply with the town's newfound spirit. Maud, fully recovered, watched with pride as Ellie transformed the saloon into a true community hub, a place where everyone, regardless of their station, felt welcome and safe. Elias Thorn returned to his empire, a changed man. He implemented new policies of corporate responsibility, ensuring that his vast enterprises benefited the communities they touched, not just his shareholders. He never forgot the lesson learned in Prosperity Gulch, the profound impact of a simple act of kindness. He often thought of Ellie, the saloon girl with the golden voice and the even more golden heart, the woman who had reminded him that true wealth lay not in what one accumulated, but in the compassion one shared. Prosperity Gulch flourished, a testament to the idea that even in the wild, untamed West, justice could prevail, and kindness could spark a revolution. The story of the saloon girl and the tycoon in disguise became a legend whispered around campfires and in saloons, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that the most profound acts of generosity often come from the most unexpected places. It was a tale of redemption, not just for a town, but for a man who had lost his way, and found it again through the selfless heart of a woman who had nothing left to give, but gave anyway. And so concludes the tale of Elara Mae and Elias Thorn, a story of a saloon girl's last coin and a tycoon's hidden heart, forever etched into the annals of the American frontier. Dear listeners of Gunpowder Legends, I hope this tale kept you on the edge of your saddle. If this story of the Old West resonated with you, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the Gunpowder Legends channel, where every week we bring you the most remarkable and thrilling stories from the American frontier. Remember that all the stories we tell here on Gunpowder Legends are works of fiction, though some may be inspired by real events or frontier legends. Our goal is to entertain you and make you experience the spirit and emotion of the untamed West from the comfort of your home. Until next time, and may your trails be safe. See you in the next episode of Gunpowder Legends.